Hello everybody and welcome back to another Mysidia Post video. My name is Alex Scott and today we're going to be looking at another meta report for Opus 9. This is a very interesting time to be looking at the meta for two reasons. For one, we're entering a national season with many large tournaments happening all over the world. So today's data includes 3 Crystal Cups and 3 national tournaments as well as some other larger regional tournaments. Another interesting note is that the Wraith vs Onion Knight deck is now legal, which means that the starter cards are going to be appearing in deck lists. Now, only 2 of the tournaments we're going to be looking at today allowed these starter cards in people's lists, but we were starting to see that they've already found a fast home in many different competitive lists. So let's get into it and you'll see what I'm talking about. Alright, so for this report we're going to look at the last 9 tournaments that have happened since we last checked up on the meta, and at the end of the video we will also look at the stats since Opus 9 released overall. So we're going to take a look at some new contenders that have been showing up in the meta. 3 decks in particular have risen to new levels since we last checked in on the meta, and 2 of these decks are decks that we've seen in the past, that being Ice Water and Water Lightning, but they have become more and more popular as we see an increased number of players choosing to pilot them in major tournaments. So for the Ice Water, I want to credit that boost in popularity to Christopher Matiski for his build that was very successful in the Australian Crystal Cup, and for the Lightning Water Agrius that we've now seen in several tournaments including in Japan, you have to give some credit to Jonathan Gordon, who slaved over his build all season long in Lightning Water, and then him and Sam Toole both saw success with it at the Earth Crystal Cup in Arizona. The third deck that we're going to see is the 4-color Moogle deck that took off in popularity after winning the Arizona Crystal Cup, with 3 different versions of it making the top 8. This deck seems to have a good all-around matchup against most decks, as we saw it face aggro, mid-range, and more control-oriented decks. This deck was possibly inspired by the 4-color non-Moogle deck that we saw in the previous meta report, but as far as we know, this deck was tested and created by Meta Potion guys and their friends. Okay, now looking overall at our data for this period, our usual suspects are also here in the meta and seeing a lot of play. This would include Mono Wind, Mono Ice, Ice Fire 6, and Water Wind. We've also seen a good mix of decks winning tournaments through this month, indicating a healthy and diverse meta. Alright, now let's check in with the overall data from Opus 9. Mono Wind has been the most popular deck with 42 top cut appearances, but we've also seen Water Wind with 34, Mono Ice with 32, and Ice Fire Final Fantasy VI with 28. So there's a steep drop off after these points, but I think that we're going to see a lot of these 4 decks going forward because they've just been so consistent. They're proven to be good, and especially these monocolored decks are going to be big hits at these 2-deck national formats, as it leaves a lot of available colors open for your second deck. Looking at overall tournament wins, Water Wind is still far ahead at 8 wins. These are all from early on in Opus 9, and that might indicate that people were not ready to play against Porm. They didn't know what to do. The deck is super efficient and would still have the same engine from previous Opuses. I think people are playing it a little bit less for multiple reasons now. I think a lot of people are qualified for nationals and they might be just running other types of lists. We might see people shying away from the deck after the Riku ban, although I think the overall power of the deck isn't that much weaker. It just changes one of the win conditions, and I think that we also are just seeing people getting used to playing against it. They have less trouble figuring out what to do against Porm, and that might just make the matchup a little bit easier to win for some experienced players. Alright, and that's going to be it from me. let me know what you think about in the comments. If you think that this is an accurate representation of the meta, or if you think that, you know, some of these decks are maybe being overestimated a bit, or maybe we're missing out on some decks that people aren't reporting on, and what you think people will find success with in the 2-deck format at their national and the European championship events. Until next time. Thank you so much for watching. You can like and subscribe to support us further, and you can read the Mysidia Post articles at themysidiapost.com. You can also check out our Patreon if you want to support us more. And if you need FFTCG singles, then look no further than Cards That You Release. They've got great deals and prices. Check them out. Finally, I'd like to thank FF Decks for creating the best website for creating your Final Fantasy trading card game decks. They've also got a Patreon, so make sure you go check them out. They work so hard for the community, so let's pay them back. See you next time.